Right now, states are getting federal approval to ban soda, candy, and sweetened drinks from SNAP benefits. That's the program that helps 42 million Americans buy food. Ever wonder why the government suddenly cares what's in your grocery cart, but only if you're poor? Today, I'll explain why blocking junk food from food stamps sounds simple, but it turns into a bureaucratic nightmare that should make everyone uncomfortable. By the end, you'll understand whether this is common sense nutrition policy or just another way to police people who are already struggling. Here's what's happening in states across the country. Several states just got waivers approved to restrict what SNAP recipients can buy with their benefits. No more soda, no candy bars, no sweetened beverages. The pitch sounds reasonable on paper, doesn't it? Taxpayer money shouldn't fund products that cause diabetes and drive up healthcare costs down the road. It's the kind of argument that makes people nod along at Thanksgiving dinner. But the moment you look at how this would actually work, the whole thing falls apart fast. The first problem hits you immediately when you start making the list. Nobody can agree on what junk food even is. Candy bars are out, obviously. But what about granola bars with 18 grams of sugar? What about those protein bars that taste like brownies because they basically are brownies with extra ingredients? Soda's banned, but what about Gatorade, vitamin water, sweetened iced tea, or chocolate milk? Diet soda has 0 sugar. Does it count as banned or allowed? What about fruit juice, which has more sugar per ounce than Coke, but comes from fruits so it feels healthy? Every single store in America runs on barcodes and checkout systems. Someone has to code every product in the database as allowed or banned. It gets messy fast. Here's what nobody's saying out loud. SNAP already doesn't cover hot food, alcohol, vitamins, pet food, or anything non-food like paper towels or soap. You can buy a 2-pound lobster tail and organic cheese, but you can't buy a rotisserie chicken because it's hot and ready to eat. The rules are already weird and inconsistent, but they're built around one basic principle. SNAP is food money, not nutrition money. It trusts people to feed themselves without someone standing over their shoulder with a clipboard. The moment you start banning specific foods based on nutritional value, you're fundamentally changing what the program means. You're saying we don't trust you specifically to make good choices, even though everyone else can buy whatever they want. And that hits different when you're the one standing at the register. Now here's where it gets wild. Soda is bad for you, and nobody's arguing otherwise. But so is butter, bacon, white bread, frozen pizza, boxed mac and cheese, and instant ramen. Where do you stop? Do we ban potato chips, ice cream and cookies, cake mix sitting on the shelf? Is that banned, or only if you buy the frosting too? The UK tried something similar with meal vouchers that couldn't buy luxury items, and it was a complete disaster. Stigma at checkout when the cashier had to override your card. Confusion about what counted as allowed. Parents unable to buy birthday cakes for their kids. It didn't make anyone healthier. It just made poverty more visible and more humiliating every single time you bought groceries. Think of it like this. Imagine your boss announced that because the company pays for your health insurance, they're monitoring what you buy at the cafeteria. No more fries, no dessert, no regular soda. Only grilled chicken, salad, and sparkling water. Meanwhile, the executives upstairs are still ordering whatever they want. That's how this policy feels. It's not about health, it's about control. And it only applies to people who don't have enough money to opt out. Here's what you need to understand. This policy is expensive to enforce. Every single store needs updated systems. Every barcode needs review. Cashiers need training. Customer service lines get flooded with complaints. And all of that costs money. Money that could go toward actually feeding people instead of policing what's in their carts. Some estimates put the administrative cost higher than what you'd save by blocking junk food in the first place. You're spending $5 to save $3 and calling it fiscal responsibility. And here's the part that really matters. This doesn't stop anyone from buying junk food. If someone wants soda, they'll still buy soda. They'll just use the cash they would have spent on milk or eggs to buy it instead, and then stretch their SNAP benefits thinner. Or they'll skip the soda and buy something else that's technically allowed but just as unhealthy, like sugary cereal or white bread. You're not changing behavior. You're just making their budget tighter and their choices harder. It's putting a lock on the cookies and thinking you solved nutrition. You didn't. You just made people hungrier and more frustrated. This matters to you because the logic doesn't stop at soda. Once you decide the government can restrict what poor people eat based on health outcomes, where does that end? Do we ban fast food next? Do we require receipts to prove you bought vegetables? And if we're so worried about taxpayer money funding unhealthy choices, why does the school lunch program still serve chicken nuggets? Why does the government subsidize corn syrup and dairy, but not fresh produce? If we actually cared about nutrition, we'd be fixing the system that makes junk food cheaper and more accessible than real food. We'd be expanding programs like the ones that double your SNAP dollars when you buy fruits and vegetables. Those programs are proven to work. They increase healthy food purchases without shaming anyone or creating a two-tier system at the checkout line. But here's the thing. Programs that add benefits don't get headlines. They don't make politicians look tough on spending. They don't feed into the narrative that poor people are making bad choices and need the government to parent them. Banning soda does. It's simple. It's punchy. It sounds like accountability. And it lets everyone else feel better about the fact that millions of people need help buying food. It's easier to debate what poor people should be allowed to eat than to ask why they're poor to begin with. It's easier to restrict individual choices than to address wages that haven't kept pace with inflation for decades. It's easier to ban candy bars than to fix a food system where processed food is subsidized and vegetables cost more per calorie. Some states are pushing back. They're saying this violates dignity, creates stigma, and turns grocery shopping into a public audit of your life choices. Others are saying it's common sense and long overdue. Both sides have studies. Both sides have experts. And meanwhile, people are just trying to feed their families without someone deciding their cart isn't virtuous enough. They're trying to make $50 stretch across a week while juggling work schedules, childcare, and transportation. Here's where we are. SNAP was designed to prevent hunger, not to optimize nutrition. It was built to give people access to food, not to decide which food is worthy. The moment you start adding moral judgments to public assistance, you're not making policy. You're making a statement about who deserves help and who deserves to be monitored. And the people being monitored don't get a vote. They don't get to opt out. They just get to stand in line at the grocery store and hope their card goes through without the person behind them noticing. If we're serious about health, we'd invest in food deserts, where fresh produce isn't even available. We'd subsidize vegetables instead of corn syrup. We'd make cooking classes and nutrition education accessible instead of assuming everyone has the time and tools to cook from scratch. We'd treat poverty like the systemic issue it is, instead of a personal failing that needs correction, one grocery cart at a time. We'd acknowledge that someone working 2 jobs doesn't have time to meal prep. We'd recognize that a family living in a motel room with no kitchen can't just roast vegetables. We'd understand that stress, exhaustion, and food insecurity change how people make decisions about what to eat. To recap, states are banning soda and candy from SNAP, and it sounds reasonable until you try to define what counts as junk food. This crosses the line from food money to nutrition money and treats poor people like they need supervision. It's expensive to enforce, doesn't actually stop anyone from eating poorly, and just makes budgets tighter while adding stigma. If we cared about health, we'd expand incentive programs that work instead of policing carts. So here's the real question. If you think the government should control what food poor people buy with assistance, would you accept those same restrictions on your own purchases just because your employer subsidizes your health insurance? And if not, why should financial struggle give the government more power over someone's plate than it has over yours?